delighted to introduce our guest speaker for today's session, Mr. Azim Rashid. He is a UNT alum and an experienced high-level executive in the music industry. And we're very excited to connect him with all of you and to have an opportunity for you to ask him all your questions and just get to know more about the inside world of being in the top industries in the music business. So I'm going to let Azim maybe have a brief introduction, and just if you could share with our students a bit of your story, of your background, just a summary, and then we can go from there.
No problem. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Gloria, for that introduction. I wish more of you were on camera. I feel like you got the peeping Toms right now. What's going on out there? I know you're in your pajamas. There we go. There's a couple. All right. But yeah, as Dr. Gloria stated, my name is Azim Rashid. I am currently the Senior Vice President of Urban Promotion at Columbia Records based in New York City. And I'm a proud graduate of the University of North Texas, class of 1994. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, and my family and I moved to Richardson, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, when I was in the end of my 8th grade year, going into my freshman year. And I've always been in love with music. I grew up in the 8-track/cassette. I guess I grew up in the 8-track and vinyl era, and I was a teenager during the cassette era, and I got into the business during the CD era. So been around and love music my entire life. I started out as a high school DJ/MC rapper. We were the first group in Dallas, Texas to put out a rap group. So for those of you with a hip hop background, Boogie Down Productions made a record called The South Bronx, circa 1985, 86. And there's an area in Dallas called Oak Cliff, which is the predominantly Black section of town. And we made our own version of the song called Oak Cliff. And it was basically the same cadence, almost the same beat. We sampled their track and everything. So we made the first rap record coming out of Dallas, Texas. And that was really big because at that time, hip hop was primarily dominating out of the East Coast, a little bit on the West Coast, but there was a big scene burgeoning in Florida, Georgia, and Texas specifically. We transformed the group, became Nemesis. And at that point, we started our own record label called Get Off Me Records. We sold about 20,000 records literally out of our trunk. For those of you who know anything about distribution, part of my job being behind the scenes was to go to each record store. So think of Starbucks. I'm not sure if they still have Hastings records around, but think of not Starbucks, but think of Barnes and Nobles, how they have music and books and vinyl, et cetera. Think of that distribution chain all over the country. And part of my job was to go to each individual retailer and have them buy what's called consignment music from me. I give them 10 cassettes, and then they'd give me, it was basically $10 a pop. They give me $100 and they sell out and I go back. And we started our own kind of bootleg distribution network. And that caught the attention of Big State Distributors, which is based out of Dallas, Texas, who basically distributed record for all the independent labels. And back in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a vast network of independent distributors, and they would cover one region of the country. So one region would cover the Southwest, another region would cover the Midwest and the Southeast, et cetera. And that caught the attention of Profile Records. And we had actually myself, our group Nemesis, as well as another guy named Ron C., who was from Vallejo, California, who we've become friends with. And we took our model of doing independent distribution and we helped him start his own label called Mactime Records. And that burgeoned us to sell collectively roughly 40,000 records. And that got us our first record deal. So we were the first group out of Dallas, I think out of Texas, to sign a nationally distributed record deal. Did that for about 3 or 4 years. And by the way, during this time, I was in and out of North Texas taking classes. We'll get into that in a minute. But my freshman year, I basically couldn't finish school because I didn't have enough money. I had a partial scholarship. In the end of my freshman year, I couldn't finish because I was so busy trying to be a rapper that I wasn't going to class. I literally took classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my friends in the group would stay with me in my dorm at Kerr Hall. And Friday, Thursday night through the next Monday evening, I would be in Dallas and we'd be rehearsing or we'd be doing the road, doing shows, etc. And at that point, I just, my interest in school was still there. I made a promise to my dying aunt, who was big on education, that I would finish my degree. But music was happening for me, and it was just really just exciting. So I did 3 albums with the group. We had some philosophical differences. I decided to leave the group and go back to school. And at that point, I realized that what I always wanted to do was be behind the scenes. And so I took what was left, roughly 3 years of education, and fit it into 2 years. I went to school around the clock, spring, summer, fall, taking full loads, working 2 internships. Um, I did everything on campus. I was president of my fraternity, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I see a couple of my frat brothers on here. We were a small group, but we did a lot. I was homecoming king my senior year, which was great because at a PWI, a black man at the school of like North Texas, that really didn't happen much. Although we had a council, a minority organizations that helped make that happen. I was head of the Black Student Union. I was on the UPC. And really, I was trying to get as much out of the educational process as I could. And we didn't have programs like this. I actually wanted to be a radio and film major, but because I was just so enamored with the music business, I couldn't keep my grades up. You had to have like a 3.7 to get an internship. And so my end of my junior year, going into my senior year, I started interning at a station that doesn't exist anymore, 100.3 Jams. And the interesting thing was the semester before, when I tried to get the internship, the young lady who was the music director, her name was Helen Little. She's still around today. Anybody in New York City listens to Light FM. She's currently on the air every day from 10 to 3. Got to plug her. She's my girl. Her thing was that the students who had the grades didn't have the personality. And the people who had the personality didn't have the grades. So what they did, they went to basically getting a letter of recommendation from the school that stated that I was a student and that I could get a pass-fail grade to be an intern. And for me, that's where it really started. Once I got that internship at Jams, the sky was the limit. And I really wanted to do any and everything. I came in early, I stayed late, I did weekend shifts. I got to talk on the radio for 2 hours on Saturday nights, which made me the big man on campus. Um, and also worked in retail at the same time. About 6 months into that internship, um, a guy named Mike Kelly, who's my current mentor, I call him my godfather in the music business. He worked at Motown, and again, back then, all of the labels had sales and distribution offices in about 13 cities. So New York, LA were the hubs, but they had them in Seattle, San Francisco, Dallas, New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago. And the promotion reps and the sales reps worked out of these offices. So people who do what I currently do in promotion, they work there. And then the sales guys who would sell records to Walmart and Target, Hastings, and all the retailers, they worked out those offices as well. So I got to learn how the music business worked from a national level at a very local level, working in Motown. And the same thing kind of happened there. Once I left the radio station, I got in Motown to be an assistant. It was lights out. I didn't just work in Motown. I worked for Polygram. I worked for Mercury Records. I worked for Island Def Jam that was just starting at that point in time. And literally anybody who needed me to do anything in the building, I did it. On the weekends, I would go to clubs, carrying records. I do mail outs. I'd answer phones. I'd go get coffee. It was whatever I could do to get down, I would. And that paid dividends because that November of my senior year in college, they offered me a job. They said, listen, as soon as you graduate, we got something for you. So I became one of the first national street team guys. I don't know if you guys are really familiar with street team marketing and mix show promotion, but basically my job was to go out and hang posters, take artists to clubs, and talk to DJs who play records that were outside of the regular programming format. And they paid me $40,000 a year as a consultant. I had to pay my own taxes, but knowing I had a job coming out of college, that right there just set the tone. I knew I wanted to be doing that for the rest of my life. 3 months into that job, Mike Kelly left Motown to move to New York City to work for a lady named Sylvia Rome, who's currently the chairwoman, the CEO of Epic Records. At that time, she was the chairwoman, the CEO of Elektra Records. part of Warner Music Group, and he went to work for her. And his boss at Motown gave me an opportunity, and I was the youngest promotion rep on the staff. I think at that time, probably one of the youngest promotion people in the country with the biggest territory. And one of the lessons I learned when I took that job was he told me, he said, listen, this job should probably pay you about $75,000. And think about this. I'm 25 years old, fresh out of college, had been struggling for the last 5 or 6 years just to get my degree. And he said, listen, I should probably pay you about $75,000, but I'm not going to do that because that's going to spoil you. He said, I'm going to give you $45,000 a year. And in a year from now, if you become what I think you're going to be, I'm going to promote you. Well, unfortunately for me, Motown was going through a transition. And a guy named Andre Harrell, who was the chairman and founder of Uptown Records, which brought you Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, Heavy D and the Boys, etc., he became the new chairman of Motown. And he brought in his whole new crew. And this is where politics come in because thankfully, there's a guy named DJ Clark Kent, one of the biggest DJs in the world currently. He was there. He used to be Dana Dane's DJ, if you're familiar with Dana Dane, who was a rapper on Profile Records as well. And he was my friend because we'd known each other almost 10 years at that point. And as Andre was going through the process of retooling the company, the organization, Clark and another guy named Jeff Thomas spoke up for me. He said, listen, this guy's going to be somebody, you should keep him around because he basically cleaned house. So fortunately, I was able to stay, but I didn't get the raise I was looking for. About a year later into that process, as Andre was still retooling the company, I got an offer to leave. That ultimately made them give me a raise, and I stayed. And then about 6 months later, Andre was on his way out the door, and I decided that I should be on my way out the door as well. And I took an opportunity, and I moved to New York City to work for MCA Records, which is part of Universal Music Group. And the interesting thing about that, and we'll get again to that as we talk about the Q&A, is I bet on myself. And I was making about $60,000 a year at that point in time, which in Texas is a lot of money, but in New York City, it's a pittance. But I took the same money to leave Dallas to go to work in New York City. And I got the same opportunity. A guy named Benny Pugh, who's a current mentor of mine and a friend of mine, he was the head of promotion at the time at MCA. And he said, listen, there's only me and a guy named Stanley Winslow, who was his boss, who are here. If you do your job in the next year, you can be on the national staff. And so I just put blinders on. And for the next 18 months, I worked like nobody's business. I was doing everything. And I was going up and down the East Coast. My territory was Boston all the way down to DC. And as promised, 18 months later, I became a national director of promotion. And I kind of just moved on from there. So I worked in MCA for about 8 years, Universal. Then I went over to Atlantic Records working for Julie Greenwald, Craig Kalman, Kevin Lyles, Leor Cohen, some of these names you may or may not know. And we started a division called Special Ops. And Special Ops, if you know anything about the services business right now, is if you have an independent company, you may only be good at one thing. Maybe most of you are record makers or you're producers or maybe you're managers, but you need somebody to help you get your projects out. And we became the service department for Bad Boy Entertainment with Sean Diddy Combs, and then also Asylum Records. So think Lil Boosie, Webby, Gucci Mane, and Todd Moskowitz, who was the chairman at the time, and a guy named Joey Mandel, who's currently the head of Black Music over at Interscope. Those two companies did not have their own promotion teams. So what we did, we acted as in-house service providers for them. And what that allowed us to do was, one, service different communities of people, but also having the cover of Warner Music Group and Atlantic Records. I did that for 10 years, got tired, really wanted a different opportunity. I moved to LA to work for Capitol Records, which is really a great opportunity for me. Capitol is one of the most storied companies in the music business. A lot of us who are from the East Coast don't really like to live in Los Angeles. So I did what I call my graduate studies at Capitol in Los Angeles for 4 years. Took an opportunity to go to Roc Nation. You know, Roc Nation, Jay-Z's company, probably one of the foremost entertainment vehicles in the business because they do everything: management, marketing, publicity, philanthropy, publishing. They have an arm that does everything, but it's all in-house and it's minority owned. And I took that opportunity because the guy I told you about before, Benny Pugh, who has traditionally been a promotion guy, became the president of the company. So this is where relationships come in. And Benny brought me in to be the head of promotion. And in the modern era, and I say the modern era is the last 40 to 50 years of the music business, there've only been 3 or 4 Black people, specifically Black men, who've been able to run promotion for urban, for pop, for rock, for country, for all different genres. And that was an opportunity for me to show people on the bigger labels, the Columbias, the MCAs, the Epics, that the minority could actually run multi formats. Because if you know promotion, you know promotion. If you know A&R, you know A&R. It may not be your forte, it may not be the thing that you're most passionate about, but the basics are all the same. Those of you who are musicians, the rudimentary elements of music are all the same. It's how you put them together and what you do with them. Had some success at Roc Nation. They had a clean sweep of the company last spring in 2019. And fortunately for me, Columbia Records and Ron Perry, who's the chairman currently, they were retooling Columbia at the time, and that opportunity existed. And here I am. So that's kind of my story, how I got here, and what I've been doing for the last 25 years.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, Azim. What a journey you've been through, and how inspiring for all of us to be able to listen to, the different moments in your career and in your life. And we have some questions here from the students. I'm just going to jump in with one of them in here. Um, Pedro is asking, can you discuss your role in the creation of brand strategies for various artists? How does the developed strategy change from the initial creation and presentation through the implementation?
So when you get to it can work for any particular organization, but I'll speak from the major label perspective because that's where I spent the bulk of my career. Um, One thing that everyone should know about artists specifically: labels do not make stars. Labels sign stars, and I borrowed that from Leo Cohen. What that basically means is that we take who you are and what you are, and we amplify it at the highest levels. And if you have it, you have it. And if you don't, you don't. And that's just the law of averages. I use a lot of sports analogies. I'm a sports fanatic, but I liken the music business, specifically on the performance side, to sports. If you're a great athlete, you're competing with every other great athlete in the world at any given point in time. And what makes you special is what makes you stand out, and then you go to an elite level. And the same thing goes for artists. So once an artist comes into the building for us, they go through the whole process. They meet with the publicity department. We find out whether or not they need, coaching, how to speak, how to get their vision, or how to talk. Most artists are shy. I can speak to that. I know I'm gregarious right now, but I haven't always been this way. We take them through media training. We take them through coaching, performance coaching, which is a job that you can actually have, of teaching people how to move, teaching people how to move and how to operate on stage. Sorry about that. I have kids at home, homeschooling. Teaching people how to move. Marketing, which is really interesting. So for those of you who take marketing classes, promotion is actually part of the marketing matrix. And the music business is really the only business that I know of in the current marketplace that takes promotion out of the marketing mix, primarily because of radio, which is a whole nother animal which you can get into. But what we do at the labels is we try to find the strengths. If you're a songwriter, we want to put you with the best musicians. If you're just a great vocalist, then we want to put you with the best songwriters and musicians. If you're someone who especially in the internet age and social media age, if you come across really well visually, or you have concepts that really work on the internet that may have gotten your attention, we want to amplify that at the highest level. So my process in terms of what I do, because of my tenure in the business, I get leaned on a little bit to give different pieces of my thought process. But generally speaking, my job doesn't start till the artist has been signed, made their record, and we figure out the vision. And part of the internet age, which is something I think is beautiful for those of you who are participating at this point in time as entrepreneurs, is the fact that what we had to do 20 years ago doesn't exist anymore. 30, 40, 50 years ago, if you wanted to break a single, you'd have to drive from Florida to Seattle. That might take you a year, hitting every little town along the way. You know, part of promotion, what we talk about is if they have a stick, if they have a radio signal, then you want to service them. So think about hitting every AM FM station from north to south, east to west over the course of a year. So part of our job is to identify if it's a local or regional artist or if it's a national hit. TikTok is a big amplifier today. If a record comes off of TikTok and it's getting 100,000 videos a day, that might be a project that we decide to say, listen, get them in here. Let's make sure he or she is very clear on their vision, and then let's start seeding that record at different places. So part of the process is identifying what the vision is for the artist and how we can amplify that at the highest level.
Thank you. Pedro, do you have any follow-ups to that question since you were the one that posted it?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I teach the undergraduate entrepreneurship course here, and one of our big initial topics is finding your vision as an artist. Can you go into a little more detail on how you help an artist clarify that vision for themselves and how it can appeal to the outside world, if you will, and how that can help you find your niche in the community?
So I'm going to sound a little harsh, and it's funny. A lot of my friends who we kind of tag team and do panels together. And I go back to my sports analogy. Music is, as far as I know, and you guys can chime in, please. I love the feedback. Music is the only profession I know where there's really no no apprenticeship required. Like if you want to play sports, you have to go through the steps. Football, you have to play pee wee, junior league, high school, college. You have to go through the process. The beauty, the gift, and the curse of the music business, especially as it exists currently in the internet age, is that you just have to have belief. And unfortunately, if you can, fortunately and unfortunately, if you can get enough people in a room to decide that you have star quality, then that opportunity exists for you to grow and blow up. I would think that a lot of people here are definitely the music majors are probably music purists and don't necessarily agree with a lot of the things they hear on the radio or see on the internet. You can wave your hand. You can give me a high five on that. I'm a purist in that way as well. Everything that we think is music isn't technically great music. But I think that in terms of trying to help artists amplify who they are, there has to be authenticity. I'm big on authenticity, just as a human being, but especially in this space. I mean, again, I've dedicated my entire life since I was a teenager to being in this space, and I've grown along the process. But I think my success has been there because of my authenticity. And I'm true to who I am. People who knew me when I was 17, I may have gotten a little older, a little fatter, a little balder, but when it comes to this vision that I've had, I'm the same guy. Um, so when it comes to helping an artist try to bolster their vision or really hone in on it, you got to ask them, are they being authentic? I know a lot of artists. I managed an artist at one point, classically trained vocalist, probably has some of the best pipes in the business. She's my sister-in-law. She didn't want to be an artist. She loves music. And so being on stage was not an authentic place for her. Being in front of a camera was not a comfortable, authentic place for her. So we had to try to find a place that fit for her. She loves to sing live. She loves to write music, but she just couldn't be a star. And so what we had to do was put her in a position to help herself. She now sings in cover bands. She sings at church, and she makes a six-figure living behind not being on American Idol, not being on The Voice, not being out doing concerts at major venues. But she's able to do that. So I think part of it is really identifying the authentic space for the artist and then helping them push forward past that. If they truly have the chops, if they truly can sing or they truly can rap, or even if there's a writer, if you truly write, like you don't want a pop writer doing country music if that's not what their passion is. So we really want to hone in on who they are as an individual. I think we should always push them to grow in that space, but let's find their comfort zone where they can be successful. I always talk about let's focus on the wins. Let's find a win for them and then grow on that platform. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm going to open the floors. If any other students have any questions, I'm going to let them chime in as well. Oh, we have someone who's just shared here. How would you advise a classical musician who wants to branch out into commercial music to make the first steps?
Well, the first question is are you trying to, as a classical musician, first of all, I applaud you because I know that takes a ton of work and a ton of just discipline. So congratulations on getting to that point. The question becomes, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a studio musician? Do you want to actually be a front person? Like, do you want to lead your own band? Do you want to be a part of a band? Like, identify what you want to do. At that point, and I know it sounds very elementary, and I try to speak very plain when I talk to students about this kind of stuff. But if you want to be a studio musician, call every studio you can find. I mean, again, the beauty of Google, which is synonymous with the internet, kind of like Xerox is synonymous with copiers, is the beauty of Google. If you just put in recording studios, 1,000 of them will pop up. And if you want to be a studio musician, you just start smiling and dialing. Hey, I play clarinet. Do you need a horn player? I play bass. Do you need a percussionist? Like whatever it is you want to do, just go down that direction. Also, too, I think that finding like-minded individuals. If you want to be in a band, who else do you know wants to be in a band? When we do these music conferences, what we find out a lot about is that, let's say there's 100 people in the room, 90 of them want to be artists. Since I'm on the music, so I'm on the business side, I say, listen, the 10 people in this room who don't want to be artists, come talk to me. You want to be a manager, you want to be an accountant, you want to be a lawyer. Let's figure out how to get the business straight. But the other 90 of you should look around that room and you should talk to those other people because in this room, all 90 of you can probably put together 9, 10 piece bands or 8, 7 piece bands, however you want to figure it out. But I think that part of it is just being open, being vulnerable, and speaking to other people who have the same shared vision you have.
Brittany, do you have any follow-up questions to that since you shared that question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
You suggest the same like smiling and dialing tactic if you want to do the business side, the managing side, or is there something different you suggest for that?
So management is a very interesting place, right? I tell artists who are looking for managers, well, you need to have something to manage. What I suggest, and it's funny, as I was speaking to someone this morning about my talk with you guys, is that as this program is being formed and you guys are going through, I think this may be 5 or 6 years that this program has existed. These programs didn't exist when I was in school. These programs didn't exist 10 years ago. So there's really no written history of the music business and how to do it. It's like people like myself and people like Dr. Clory who have actually been in the business. We're kind of making a way for you guys. So I think if you want to manage artists, um, you got to go to a lot of shows. Obviously, you have to kind of surf the internet and find artists that maybe fit what you think is your forte and bring them together. But management is like anything else. Like if you can manage a McDonald's, you can manage an artist. I mean, you need to have a lawyer, you need to have a team, a lawyer, an accountant, a business manager, people that can help you manage a business. But the conversation for you as a manager is one, get as much education about the business as you can so that you are qualified, so to speak, when you're talking to people. But management is really about trust. You know, I have had a couple good managers in my career, and I've had a couple bad managers in my career. And the first thing is, can I trust them? Because what I'm asking you to do now is to be my voice, to be my face, to help me procure employment and finances and security for me, my family, and anybody else I might be taking care of. The other piece is, what is your vision as a manager? Just say you found, your name is Jillian, right? So Jillian, you saw me rapping at a concert and you say, you know what, he could be so much bigger. So when you see me at the concert and you get 5 minutes with me backstage, say, hey, Azim, I think that you're doing great, but here's what I see for you in the next 5 years. So what is your vision for the artist? So again, yes, it's somewhat the smiling and dialing, but it's more probably practical, as I say, pounding the pavement, going out, going to shows, getting on the internet, surfing, finding artists you want. Also, too, putting together your own team.
Fe- Feel free to follow up with an additional question, Jillian, if you want. You're good. Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
We have a few in
Yes.
chat right now.
Yeah. So TD says, how does promotions interact with 360 contracts?
That's not really our thing. Just want to give a quick, and I forgot to do this at the Corey, but I will send you some articles when after we speak. You and I will have a continue our conversation we had the other day. Just kind of education about record deals, right? So 360 got to be a bad word probably about 10 years ago because a lot of artists felt like it was a situation where labels were taking advantage of them. And just a little history on the 360 deal. So 360 basically is just that totality, everything. And what happened in the early 2000s as the CDs started to go away and MP3s, file sharing became a way of selling music, the business took a big hit. I mean, I was working in retail when vinyl and CDs, we switched from vinyl to CDs and cassettes to CDs. And what happened was these same masters that people have been selling for 20, 30, 40, 50 years for $9.99, the CD was new technology. And what the labels did, which, is good business, they said, listen, here's a new product. We're going to convert everybody. So you're selling the same Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, AC/DC album that you were selling in 1979. Now you're selling in 1992. It's the same piece of product, but everybody wants the new technology. Huge boom for the business. And it took us on a 10-year boom. Something that you paid $9 for 10 years ago, now you're paying $20 for. And a lot of the labels, unfortunately, took advantage of some of the artists, and the deals just weren't fair. So with digitizing of the music, it kind of made everybody step back and had to play fair. Well, I think that anybody who's as an artist and as a business person, I made the music. You wrote the music. We should get paid for it. So music isn't free. Somebody's labor, their blood, sweat, and tears, as well as their dreams went into that. So I don't think file sharing for free is necessarily good either. But what happens, the music business had to take a step back and say, well, how do we make money now? So it took a few years, between iTunes and all the different, configurations of how to sell music digitally. It took a few years for legislation and all that to get put together. But in the meantime, the business still had to maintain itself. And so what the labels decided, which I think is fair, is that, listen, Azim, you were selling 1 million records per album for 3 albums. And now with digital downloads, your records are now doing a third of that. Now you're doing 300,000. However, now you're selling $10 million a year in merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies and bandanas and glow sticks, etc. at your concerts. And oh, by the way, Doritos gave you a commercial using that hit song you made 5 years ago. And they gave you $1 million for that. And oh yeah, Leon McKee's doing a movie and he wants you to be the lead actor in it. And now you're going to make $10 million plus residuals off that. And how did all that happen? Because you were a music star first. So what the label said was, listen, if you guys are going to go and make money outside of music based on music being your building block, we want to share in that. But we're not just going to share in it in terms of just taking the money from you. We're going to work for that money. So now we have an agency inside of our building who is going to go out and seek out a Coke commercial, a Doritos commercial. They're going to get product placement and have Nike put their shoes in your video. And oh yeah, when you guys go out on tour, we're going to get a sponsor that's going to make sure that, Aquafina is the official water of Azim Rashid's tour. And so that became a way for the business to recoup some of the money they've been losing on sales, and also to help the artists further the vision to be more than just music stars. Well, obviously with everything, corruption, et cetera, so people take advantage of that. So it became a bad word. But I think that the 360 is actually a way so everybody who participates in the music process can actually make money and benefit from it. As a promotion guy, I don't really get involved with that. That's not really my job. Now, if someone comes to me with an idea or a partnership, I will then facilitate it to the marketing department and the artist manager, and I might get a little credit for bringing the deal to the table, but it's not really something that's a promotion. There's a promotion function.
Thank you. TD, do you have any follow-up questions for Azim? I don't see him there. Okay. Oh, okay, says no. Okay. Okay, so I have another question here. It says iPhone, so I'm not sure who iPhone is. Oh, there you go. Okay. My name is Michael. What are some of the best ways to get a record label's attention?
That's a great question, and it's a question I often get asked. Again, I hate to sound very elementary when I say this, but music labels are we call ourselves content companies now. We're in the business of amplifying hit music. Period. Point blank. That's it. So if you have a hit record, we'll find you. That's one of the things that we talk about. Artists always say, "Well, the labels won't give me a shot." There's 40 people on this call. We have a room of 20 people who all they do is analytics. They search the trends, they comb the internet, they look for music. And again, I think that those of you today in the music space, you have the best opportunity. When I was making music, I literally had to get in my car and drive from city to city, radio station to radio station, club to club. Today, all of us could sit here right now on our computers, make a song, put it on YouTube, and within 2 hours, we'd have some validation whether or not that product was hot or not. So what I would recommend is you make sure that you are making music that is authentic to yourself. B, I use every platform available to me. So whether it be SoundCloud, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Apple Music, getting your products out. If it's hot and I'm a purist in this, that I don't think necessarily the internet should necessarily make stars, but it's our biggest validation tool. The internet will validate who you are or who you think you are. Now, there is some strategy to this as well. I tell artists who want to get into the business, you shouldn't put out a new song every 3 hours either. You need to kind of develop your strategy. I will put out a song every 10 days on my platform. But again, if I only have 5 followers on Spotify, I'm on SoundCloud, or 5 people on YouTube, then that's maybe not necessarily the best thing to do. So the first thing you need to figure out is your digital strategy. How have you built up your platforms? They always say that imitation is the best form of flattery. So if I was a rapper today, I'd go on Travis Scott's page and I would tag him and everybody on his page with all my music, just so that in the hopes that maybe 1% of those people will listen to my music as well. I would make sure that all my visuals look clean. One thing about social media specifically, if you're at Azim Rashid on Twitter, you need to be at Azim Rashid on Spotify. You need to be at Azim Rashid on SoundCloud. You need to be at Azim Rashid on Instagram. So make sure that the people can find you. Can't be Azim Rashid 121 on SoundCloud and Azim Rashid 1906 on Spotify. You need to be the same guy or the same artist on every platform. From there, you start building your following. And again, I think it's a cruel world. There's 7.5 billion people in the world. Let's say 1 billion of them want to be artists or entertainers. You're fighting with 1 billion people. But I think that the niche is you can be validated through that process. The other thing that I tell people trying to get into our business today is you have to ask yourself a question. Do you want to be rich and famous, or do you want to make a living? I think Dr. Clory would agree with me that there are tons of opportunities, even as artists, where you can make a good living without necessarily being rich and famous, or not rich and famous, but being publicly acknowledged, without ever going on BET, without doing their AMAs, without ever reaching a Grammy. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is my end goal? Do I just want to be heard? Is my music a vehicle to help soothe people? Is my music something that I just want people to enjoy? Could I make a living doing this? Or are you looking for some other validation? And that's a question you need to try to answer early on, because it's going to guide your vision, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
such a good question, because yes, that's the eternal conflict of artists and creatives, isn't it? To find that alignment between enjoying and pursuing what you do and what is your craft and your calling and your passion, with also making a living and finding a way to create that. Um, Michael, would you like to follow up with any other questions?
Oh no, that actually answered it perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kira.
My shirt says promotion versus everybody. I made these shirts a few years ago. If you're familiar with the Detroit versus everybody thing, Detroit, people, if you know anybody from Detroit or Michigan, Detroit, they're very proud people. So you started seeing this versus everybody going on. So I made these hoodies. I actually talking about entrepreneurship. I'm trying to get my children to start a merch company, and I wanted this to be one of the things that they sold.
Kira, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. What advice do you have to artists, like say like a jazz artist that's also trying to like establish their um grounds as a side person, like they're playing, for Broadway, or they're playing jazz in Lincoln Center as a side person, but what advice do you have to people that are establishing like their alter ego, that maybe like they have like a side project that's maybe more explicit, and like how do you, have them keep both separate but also together? You want them to know who they are, but maybe you don't want the Broadway people seeing this other kind of project, or maybe they won't hire you. So like, what advice do you have?
Listen, pseudonyms and aliases are what the business, has been made of, definitely in the last 20 years. For those of you who took a little time to research me, my alter ego is Black Ari Gold. People are like, who is that? Ari Gold is a character from the show Entourage. He was an agent, a Jewish American agent who in Hollywood who's repping, actors and actresses. And why I chose that character was because where I identify with Ari Gold is that one, he's a family man. I'm a husband and a father, and the oldest of four siblings. Two, he was passionate. And for those who may encounter me or may hear stories of me later, I hope they're all good. But when it comes to passion, you will meet few people in our business who are as passionate as I am for my artists and for my craft. But also, too, he was a reasonable guy. I mean, he put in his time. And so I identified with him, and I said, well, why you got to make it Black? I said, well, Ari Gold was white. I'm a Black Ari Gold. And I kind of took that as my pseudonym, and I use that on all my platforms. So for a musician like yourself, one, I would come up with this with a different vehicle, a different name, a different pseudonym, and I would that has to be separate from your identity as a performer in the, I call it the more serious space of jazz at Lincoln Center, et cetera. And also, if you have a team, if you have somebody repping you, make sure that they're on point with the messaging as well. Now, the funny thing is, if you know the artist Gnarls Barkley, anybody know Gnarls Barkley? You know CeeLo Green? You know Goody Mob? CeeLo Green was in Gnarls Barkley. So putting yourself in those different spaces, but when he's in Gnarls Barkley, he's a different person. When he's in Goody Mob, he's a different person. And when he's CeeLo Green, he's a different person. So it takes a lot of work. Hopefully, you can juggle, be very ambidextrous in how you approach that. But you just have to make sure that your vision is clear, and just stick with it. And listen, weirder and odder things have happened. People having two different careers as two different genres of music and two different people, but it can be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we just have a few minutes left before our session is over. And I'm curious, Aziz, does anyone have, first of all, are there any other questions? Please, pop them in the chat. But I would love to know if you can look back at yourself when you were in the place that all these students are, just full of energy, full of dreams, full of like hope for their life, for their future, with all this incredible skill set developed as musicians, and having worked really hard to get to where they are. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell yourself looking back, when you were in their shoes, and of course things have changed in the industry since then, but what could you tell like the students now in terms of like what they should be focusing on, to move their careers forward, to be successful? If there are any words of wisdom you can share with them, things you know
Well,
now that you didn't know when you were in their shoes.
oh wow, I mean that's a lot. I think that well first of all, there's a philosophy that I have, and it's actually the the kind of the mission statement for a foundation that I'm currently in the middle of producing, called Behind the Mic. And the first thing is that there's 5 jobs in front of the mic, and there's 500 jobs behind the mic. And the reason I came up with that is because even though I was an artist and somewhat successful at it, that wasn't my passion. My passion has always been behind the scenes. I used to walk around carrying a briefcase. If you talk to my group mates or people who knew me in my earlier iteration of my career, they'd always laugh like, this guy wants to be the next Berry Gordy or the next Andre Harrell, God bless his soul, or the next Russell Simmons, or currently Kevin Lyles or Sean Combs or any of those guys. And so for me, it was identifying early on what I wanted to be. If I could go back and do something differently, and I really wouldn't, because I know that all those experiences got me to where I am right today, I probably would have taken the entrepreneurship role for myself a little more seriously. I spent 25 years making stars, and it's been fulfilling, it's been rewarding. But what I would do at this point in the game, for those of you who are either soon to be graduates or in the middle of your curriculum, I'd really identify what I want. Um, it's a harsh reality that this business is built on the backs of the youth. Just because as you become older and you get more responsibilities, you get married, you have kids, whether you're taking care of aging parents, it's not for the faint of heart. And I think that going back to my statement about, do you want to be rich or famous, or do you just want to make a living? Those are very real world conversations you have to have with yourself. And we've always heard the phrase starving artist. Nowhere like the music business, and I think the film and television business, nowhere else does that really ring true than in those 2 professions, because what we do as musicians is we're trying to tap into an emotional medium. We're trying to tap into the soul and the spirit to move someone to, in the commercial space, cast their dollar vote to help us live our lifestyle. So you should really think about what you want to do. Like, what kind of career do you want to have? Again, I go back to this, to my sister-in-law. She makes a 6-figure living singing background and singing at church. It's not bad, right? So I think that you should focus on and your vision can and will change over time. You should always be adapting, but you should look at your short-term, mid-term goals and decide what that means for you and your life. For those of you who may take on partnerships with domestically, getting married, etc., think about how that's going to impact your life. I'll share with you personally that for the last 6 years, I've been commuting from New York and Los Angeles to Texas. Thankfully, I have a strong partner in my wife, and my children are seen to be socialized pretty good. Lauren, you socialize okay?
I'm so nice.
My oldest daughter's here listening. They've socialized pretty well and adapted, but I spent 6 years of my life going back and forth across the country because, one, my wife believes in my vision and what I want to do as an executive, but two, what makes the most sense for my family, for me to be moving them from east to west to south, or for me, the one person, to be on a plane every weekend so I can get home to them. So really just, try to hone in as quickly as possible on what you want to do. And again, not to be a dream killer, but really assess who you want to be. You can't be a manager if you don't like talking to people. Just don't work. It sounds good, right? I want to be a manager, but you hate talking to people. You won't even order from Starbucks. You use the app, right? And go pick it up with your name on it. It's hard to be a musician or an artist if you have stage fright. Like, it's okay. You might be the baddest bassist in the band, but if you can't stand on the stage in front of 500 people, let alone 5,000 people, that might not be your thing. So identify as quickly as possible your strengths, your weaknesses, and really figure out how much fortitude you have to get through this. One thing I say all the time, and you might have heard this, is that every overnight sensation is 10 years in the making. And the reason I title my talk today overnight sensation, my extended journey through the business, is because I'm still growing. I'm still going. But it's taken me a long time. And there are people who I'm meeting for the first time, like my boss, meeting for the first time, but I've had all the success. So some people say, "Oh man, you lucky," or "Oh, how'd you do that so fast?" I said, "Dude, you know what I had to do to get to this point?" So that's why I call my talks, the overnight sensation, my extended journey to success, because it's taken me a long time to get here. And I've had my ups and downs. I've been laid off, not because the other guy was more talented or the other lady was better, is that they had a connection that I didn't have, or I wasn't part of the vision that this executive had for the particular company. But I kept going. And my fortitude was the fact that I knew that I was going to get to where I currently am and where I'm trying to go. So really try to identify what you want to do. If you have the intestinal fortitude to see it through and understand that there are going to be good days and bad days, but if you really about it, you can make it happen.
Thank you, Azim. What a beautiful way to end our session today. That was just so empowering. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey, your trajectory. I know all of the students here, and we're all very inspired by hearing you share. And thank you for your support of the university. Thank you for your support of the program, your enthusiasm. Azim is working behind the scenes and creating opportunities for all of you to develop relationships and connect with key people in the music industry through all of his relationships in all of these different incredible, big player companies. So he is going way above and beyond what he did today and to actually help all of you really get the most opportunities possible as during your experience at the university. So I want to thank you for that as well, and for your passion and your enthusiasm, and we look forward to continuing our conversations, and thank you to all the students who asked these insightful questions.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. And everyone, just please be safe. Please be diligent and vigilant in your journey, and just don't ever give up. If it's something you want, just know that you can have it. Thank you, Dr. Corey.
Thank you, Azim. Bye, everyone.